Welcome to this explainer. Okay, so I recently fell down an absolutely incredible historical rabbit hole, and I'm just thrilled to share this with you. Let's mentally step back in time together, thousands of years, right into the cool, shadowy archive of the House of Life at Waset. That's the great ancient Egyptian city the Greeks later called Thebes. Picture it. The air is thick with the scent of dried papyrus and crushed lotus. You've got senior scribes sitting at these heavy wooden tables, their fingers permanently stained with the black soot and red ochre ink of their trade. And right there, in that very room, recorded on crumbling flakes of limestone and carefully rolled papyri, lie some of the absolute most bizarre, brilliant, and frankly captivating legal precedents in human history.
Okay, let's dive into this with an actual, documented, historical case to see what we're really dealing with here. Imagine a guy named Hori. Hori borrows a copper pot from his neighbor and, well, he fails to return it. It's petty theft, right? Yet the High Court of Justice, known as the Great Kenbet, hits him with a sentence so severe it literally sounds fictional. He's ordered to give his neighbor a servant, he gets beaten with 100 strokes of a palm rod, and he has to swear an oath that if he denies the debt again, his nose will be cut off and he'll be exiled to the brutal gold mines of Kush. All of that for a copper pot. We really have to ask ourselves, why on earth would such an extreme punishment exist for such a petty crime?
Well, to answer that, we have to compare two very different worlds. There's this ancient scribe named Kenamun, and he actually had to explain this exact concept to his young, kind of bewildered apprentice. You see, neighboring civilizations, like the Babylonians, they had rigid rules carved right into stone pillars. Every specific crime had a perfectly measured penalty in silver attached to it. It was a strict, literal rulebook, but Egyptian law. It didn't rely on a single rulebook at all. Instead, it was built on a much deeper, way more complex spiritual framework. They relied entirely on the philosophy of Ma.
To really understand their justice system, you've got to understand these two crucial terms. Ma'at is way more than just a goddess of truth. It is the cosmic order itself. It's the perfect balance of the universe. When the sun rises or, when the Nile floods to fertilize the fields, that is Ma'at. On the flip side, we have Isfet, which is chaos. So in the eyes of the ancient Egyptian court, when Hori stole that copper pot, he wasn't simply breaking some local municipal rule. He was actively introducing chaos, Isfet, into the very fabric of the world. Therefore, the punishment couldn't just fit the crime. It had to completely eradicate the chaos and perfectly restore the balance of Ma'at. And as you'll see, restoring that balance sometimes required some pretty bizarre, terrifying, or wonderfully strange judgments.
Section 1. Sacred Cats and Divine Interference.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is that protecting this cosmic balance didn't just apply to human property. It meant enforcing wildly intense rules regarding animals. Take the legally mandated process a family had to go through when a household cat died. Cats were these sacred protectors of the grain stores, slaying venomous serpents and disease-carrying rats. So, if a cat died, the family was required by law to enter a deep mourning period. And step 2 here is the real kicker. They had to physically shave off their eyebrows. The cat was then expensively embalmed in fine linen and buried in a sacred cemetery. And get this, if you failed to shave your eyebrows, you weren't just seen as sad. You were actively evading piety, and local magistrates would literally launch a criminal investigation against you. Intentionally killing a cat meant an automatic death penalty. In one recorded instance, a foreign Mycenaean merchant accidentally crushed a cat with his chariot wheel, and an angry mob beat him to death right in the street. And the law didn't even punish the mob, because, think about it, without the cat, the rat eats the grain, the kingdom starves, and chaos reigns.
So, the law is undeniably strict, but what happens when a crime is committed and there is zero proof? Imagine an ancient trial where a guy is accused of stealing a beautifully carved bed or a copper chisel, but he simply denies the whole thing, and there are absolutely no witnesses. How does the court establish Ma'at then? I mean, what is the ancient equivalent of a lie detector test?
Well, they let the gods decide, literally. In the isolated, highly literate village of Set Ma'at, which we also know as Deir el-Medina, where the elite tomb artisans lived, they invoked the oracle. On festival days, priests would carry this heavy wooden boat bearing a hidden statue of the deified pharaoh Amenhotep I right on their shoulders. The petitioner would step up and speak directly to the statue, reading a list of suspects or asking a yes or no question. If the answer was yes, the priest claimed the spirit of the god actually compelled them to dip violently forward, making the heavy ship literally bow to the ground. This nod of the gods was a legally binding verdict. Property was transferred and accused thieves were beaten based entirely on whether that statue moved. It was just a psychological masterstroke that maintained perfect community harmony.
Section 2.
the first labor strike.
We usually imagine ancient pharaohs as these absolute tyrants who just executed anyone who defied them, right? But the philosophy of Ma'at made things surprisingly contractual. This brings us to a state record from the 29th year of the reign of Ramses III. The kingdom's wealth was drained from wars, and the elite artisans carving the pharaoh's tomb weren't getting their monthly rations of wheat, barley, and fish. So the workers did the unthinkable. They laid down their copper chisels, bypassed the royal guards, marched straight to a sacred mortuary temple, and just sat down in the courtyard. They cried out, "We are hungry. There are 18 days past in this month, and we have received nothing."
I really want to emphasize this surprising number, 3. That is the number of times these artisans went on strike in a single year. Anywhere else in the ancient world, like over in Babylon or Assyria, workers refusing to build the king's monuments would be executed for treason on the spot. But what did the highest legal authority, the vizier, do here? He sent negotiators with 40 sacks of grain to appease them. Why? Because by the laws of Ma'at, it was a divine contract. The state had broken the balance by failing to provide for its people. The workers were legally justified in holding the divine state accountable. No executions, just back pay. Pretty amazing, right?
Section 3. Love, Law, and Betrayal. Moving away from monumental state affairs and into the home, we see laws that were just incredibly unique. And this brilliantly illustrates the contrast between Egypt and their neighbors across the Great Green Sea. Under Greek law, women were essentially treated as children, legally owned by their fathers or husbands. But under Egyptian law, a woman was a fierce, independent legal entity. She could own land, buy and sell property, run her own business, testify in court, and she could initiate a divorce just as easily as a man could.
Just consider this beautifully preserved marriage settlement. The husband legally binds himself stating, "If I leave you as wife, whether because I hate you or because I love another woman, I shall give you 50 pieces of silver and 1/3 of all the property we have acquired together." It's incredible. A woman's financial independence and property were fiercely protected by the courts if a marriage simply didn't work out. However, while the courts were incredibly tolerant of divorce, they were completely unforgiving of adultery. Betraying the marriage bed was seen as a profound disruption of the community's spiritual harmony. If caught, a woman faced a monstrous public mutilation, the amputation of her nose, designed to ensure she carried a permanent, visible scar of her betrayal before being banished. And the male accomplice didn't escape either. Standard legal precedent demanded he received 1,000 blows with a palm rod, which, honestly, was often enough to cripple or kill him outright. So the law gave extraordinary freedom, but it exacted a dark, dark toll for betrayal.
Section 4. Treason and Royal Loopholes. Things get even darker when we escalate from the household up to the throne itself. The Judicial Papyrus of Turin records the infamous harem conspiracy, which was this massive plot to slit the throat of Pharaoh Ramses III. And the cast of characters involved is just shocking. Queen Taya, a minor wife wanting her son on the throne, working alongside women of the royal harem, high-ranking army commanders, and treasury overseers. But what's truly fascinating is that they also employed wax magic spellcasters. In the Great Kenbet, magic wasn't viewed as just some silly superstition. Crafting a wax voodoo doll that cursed the pharaoh was treated as a literal, physical weapon in court, a capital offense legally identical to stabbing him with a bronze dagger.
So the crucial point is how the court handled the guilty royal prince, Pentawere. Now, the normal penalty for high treason was impalement. But Pentawere had the blood of the gods in his veins. By the laws of Ma'at, the state could not physically spill royal blood without contaminating the executioners and completely disrupting the cosmos. So they utilized a euphemistic legal loophole recorded as being left in his own hands. The court simply locked the prince in a room with a cup of deadly poison. The state didn't actually execute him. The law merely provided the environment, and he was forced to commit suicide, keeping the executioner's hands clean of divine blood.
Section 5. Erasing the soul.
We are now looking at the final, most terrifying law in the archive. As the new kingdom weakened and poverty spread, desperate men turned to tomb robbing, and this was a crime that went way beyond the physical world. The papyrus Leopold II Amherst holds the brutal confession of a stonecutter named Amen Panufer, extracted through a horrific torture called the bastinado. He and his gang tunneled into a pyramid tomb, and his recorded words are chilling. He said, "We found the noble mummy of the king. We stripped off the gold. We set fire to their inner coffins. We stole their goods." To unwrap a divine mummy and burn a royal coffin was a violation of Ma'at on a level that threatened the entire universe.
The punishment for this was known as damnatio memoriae. You see, In Egyptian philosophy, your name, your Ren, is the actual anchor of your soul. To live eternally in the afterlife, your name literally must be remembered. The court ordered Amenhotep's name to be chiseled out of absolutely every monument, birth record, and stone in the empire. His family was expressly forbidden from speaking it. He wasn't just executed, he was retroactively uncreated from existence.
The physical penalty was agonizing enough. Impalement alive on a sharpened wooden stake, left to bake in the sun as a public warning. But the true horror was the spiritual sentence. Because his name was erased and no spells or Book of the Dead were read for his unmarked grave, the law ensured his soul was denied the afterlife forever. His soul was legally condemned to be thrown to Ammit, the devourer, to be consumed into absolute utter nothingness.
Section 6. The Feather of Truth.
And that brings our narrative full circle, right back to the philosophy of the scribes working in the House of Life. Every single bizarre law we've looked at today, from shaving your eyebrows over a deceased cat, to proxy executions in locked rooms, to striking workers demanding their divine contracts be met, it all served one singular overarching purpose. It was all about preparing for the ultimate judgment in the afterlife, weighing a human heart against the ostrich feather of Ma'at on the scales of Anubis. If the heart was heavy with Isfet and chaos, the devourer ate it. If it was light, the person lived forever. Their entire legal system was meticulously designed to keep the hearts of the people as light as that feather.
It's a really profound way to look at how we balance the universe around us through our own actions. Which leaves me with one final provocative thought for you to take away from this explainer today. If your heart was placed on those ancient scales against the feather of Ma'at today, how would it weigh?
Please like and subscribe.